anti-Trump critics a while back. Are the anti-Trump forces now opening themselves up to criticism for the way they're protesting?
They could be, Jim. Trump is already trying to make hay of this. He's calling the protesters, quote, thugs and criminals. And if violence continues to be instigated up by these protesters, watch for him to try to use this to his advantage. When violence broke out at those Trump rallies earlier this year, more registered voters in a CBS poll said the protesters were more to blame for the violence. So this could work in his favor moving forward.
All right, so does Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, do they have to distance themselves, not from the message, but from the tactics of the protesters?
Well, they and many others reacted to the violence at those Trump rallies and were highly critical of him. They accused him of encouraging his crowds to violently react to those protesters. The question is, was this a precursor to larger violent protests? And if so, perhaps the Democrats, they may want to address this before it becomes a wildfire that spreads to the Republican convention this summer.
All right, Steve Shigara, Shaq, thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Baghdad is under a state of emergency tonight. This comes after protesters forced their way into the Green Zone, which has always been the government's secure stronghold. The U.S. Embassy has not been evacuated, but Jonathan Vigliotti shows us the chaos that erupted just blocks away.
Thousands of anti-government protesters charged towards the Iraqi capital's heavily fortified Green Zone, home to government ministries and foreign embassies. Armed police, outnumbered, simply looked on. Local Baghdad media captured what happened next as protesters tore down a portion of the blast wall and stormed the elite compound, a place that is off limits to most Iraqis. The massive group broke through Parliament's main entrance, flooding halls and conference rooms, even sitting in seats normally occupied by lawmakers. In the lobby, they were heard chanting, "Victory is for Iraq." Today's breach marks a major escalation of a months-long political crisis, brought on in part by plunging global oil prices and the ongoing fight against ISIS. Just this morning, a truck bomb at a busy market filled with Shiite civilians killed at least 21 people. ISIS claimed responsibility. Supporters of popular Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr are demanding an overhaul of what they call Iraq's corrupt and ineffective political system. "We demand reforms. The corrupt and the thieves must be kicked out of the Iraqi parliament," said protester Sayed Majed. No one was reported injured in today's protests. While a state of emergency was declared, counterterrorism forces were asked to stand down and let the protests run its course. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, London.
Today, the Syrian government launched more airstrikes on rebel-controlled neighborhoods in Aleppo. The Assad regime has been pounding Aleppo for the past 9 days, killing nearly 250 civilians. Holly Williams joins us from across the border in Turkey. Good evening, Holly.
Jim, the US and Russia have both backed a new partial truce in Syria, which began at midnight last night, and it seems to be holding in parts of Latakia province in the country's north, as well as around Damascus, the Syrian capital. But the truce doesn't apply to Aleppo, where so much of the fighting is taking place as the Syrian regime, backed by Russia and Iran, tries to recapture all of the city. A ceasefire agreed 2 months ago has now broken down, and this past week we've seen disturbing internet video coming out of Aleppo as residential neighborhoods in the rebel-controlled parts of the city have been pummeled. On Thursday, one of the few remaining hospitals in rebel-controlled Aleppo was destroyed by an airstrike. Doctors Without Borders, the international aid group that supported the hospital, said that it was targeted by a direct hit and that 50 people were killed. The International Committee of the Red Cross said that 4 more medical facilities, including a cardiac hospital, were attacked on Friday in both rebel and regime-controlled areas. And Jim, the group has called for an end to the indiscriminate violence.
Holly Williams with the partial truce.